One win. The Braves stand one win away from the World Series. You're watching Battery Power. Corey McCartney along with Grant McAuley. And the question, Grant, going into Game 4 of the NLCS was how would Atlanta react after a stunning loss to the Dodgers in Game 3? The answer, they would respond in resounding fashion. The bullpen turned in an impressive 9 innings. The bats came alive, 4 home runs, 2 from Eddie Rosario, in an historic night in a 9-2 win Wednesday at Dodger Stadium.
Well, I tell you, so many things went right on a night and on a day after a game that really couldn't have gone more wrong in the late frames. I mean, you knew that the Braves had the Dodgers where they wanted in Game 3. Game 4, they had to forget that and turn their focus to winning the day. That's something we've talked about each and every one of these that we've done, each and every preview, and every time we talk about it, I think off the air, it's always the focus on that day's game, and that's what the Braves did so well in Game 4, was simply turning the page and working with what they had. And what they had was a bullpen that was up to the challenge. And, you know, Corey, in the afternoon leading up to the game, when you heard that Huascar Ynoa was not even going to be available, you thought, oh, no, you know, this is one of the guys who's supposed to help us get the innings just to get through this game. Even if you didn't love his numbers, which I certainly had my reservations about Ynoa against the Dodgers lineup, you still would have liked to have had all the bullets that you could to utilize in that game. And it felt like that could be a setback. Couldn't have been further from the truth. Jesse Chavez, after throwing a complete game in the bullpen and unfortunately being on the mound for the loss in Game 3, he came out and gave you the inning that you wanted first up. And then let's talk about Drew Smyly for a moment. I know we'll get into the offense, but 10 big outs. A couple of inherited runners did score against him. A ball that found its way through the infield from A.J. Pollock, the pinch hitter, that scored those 2 runs. But the 10 biggest outs and the biggest appearance for Drew Smyly in a Braves uniform, he showed up when they needed him most to cover those frames and help bridge the gap to get to the guys that have been so good for you all year long. A.J. Minter also came up huge. And then, of course, the offense led by Eddie Rosario, but also featuring Adam Duvall and, of course, Freddie Freeman, who made a special cameo. He's kind of like the Nick Fury of this group at this point. Now we know that Freddie Freeman's involved. The Braves bats have assembled, and they were able to put together a pretty blockbuster kind of night out in Hollywood. We needed to see that too. No extra base hits were had in Game 3. Lots of extra base hits, including some over the wall for the Braves in their Game 4 win.
Yeah, you could almost count the ways. I mean, you mentioned it that this shouldn't have worked out from a pitching standpoint. I mean, certainly, you know, not only is it going to be Huascar Ynoa, and then it's not going to be Huascar Ynoa, and then it's Jesse Chavez, who, you know, was on the mound and gave up that go-ahead double to Mookie Betts the night before. You mentioned Drew Smyly. He started 23 games for this club this year, had been removed from the rotation after a 5.31 ERA and 12 homers in his last 9 starts. He retires 7 straight. The Dodgers are hitless until the 5th. I mean, they win it tonight with a collective 900 OPS against Smyly, including Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, Will Smith, all over 1,100. 5 Dodgers had taken him deep. And, I mean, all the unexpected stuff that happened tonight, I think more than anything, Drew Smyly being that effective in that role tonight was something I just didn't see coming.
No, I mean, you hoped for it once Ynoa was no longer an option, because those are the 2 guys that had starting experience this year. And also think about this, 18 days between appearances, in-game appearances. I know he's been throwing on the side and keeping himself ready, but Drew Smyly had not appeared in a game since October 2nd and is able to come out and give the Braves what he did. I know it wasn't, you know, the stuff of legend. It wasn't Sandy Koufax or a Bob Gibson or whoever you want to talk about as far as October legends are concerned. Heck, even a John Smoltz, if you want to throw him in there. But it was what the Braves needed. It was enough to help get the whole collective of that bullpen through the 9 innings that they were being asked for. And as we talked about, and as I said before that game, even when Ynoa was slated to start, you've got to have the bats wake up and work over Urias. The bullpen's job is basically to hold the line and give the team a chance to win. But the onus was on the Braves offense to show up in a big way. And man, did they ever. And Eddie Rosario is starting to look like one of the best acquisitions in Braves history. You talked about this a little while back when it came to great trades that the Braves had made in terms of, you know, the Fred McGriffs and guys of that nature that had come over and done some big stuff for Atlanta. Eddie Rosario didn't get as many plate appearances, but man, he's making them count, not only to help the Braves get into the playoffs, but now in the playoffs, he is wearing out the Dodgers. And this is after a pretty productive NLDS on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a short list. It was guys like Fred McGriff and Mark Teixeira and Adam LaRoche. I mean, they just not had guys that come over in the via trade as position
Right.
players way that have made this kind of an impact. And also think about not only were the Braves expecting the bullpen to do something tonight, and you mentioned the bats. Think about who they were going against. Julio Urias. A 20-game winner this year. The fifth best pitcher in the National League in Fangraph WAR. And the Braves ate him alive. A home run and a triple for Eddie Rosario in his first two at bats. I mean, tonight was just borderline insane for him, like historically insane. After those, the home run and the triple, he hits a single, then he comes up in the ninth and bashes a 3-run home run. He did not become the second player in postseason history to hit for the cycle. It finishes a double shy, but he became the first player ever with 2 home runs, a triple, and a single in a single postseason game. He's the only player with 2 4-hit games in LCS history. And Grant, we spent a lot of time after game 2 just talking about the steal that he was at the deadline and all this. I honestly, I mean, it's like, I don't even know what more to say about this guy at this point. It's absolutely unbelievable. He has a 13-15 OPS in the postseason. Kike Hernandez has been fantastic for the Red Sox. He now trails Eddie Rosario in postseason OPS.
Wow. And Hernandez has been wearing folks out in October as well. But Eddie Rosario has been the driving force in the Braves' overall lineup and their run-scoring attack. And we're seeing other guys that are chipping in. I think Austin Riley has had a pretty good October. He was quiet in the Game 4 win, but he was in the middle of a big inning for him in Game 3. You knew that Riley was going to have to produce. You felt like Freddie Freeman was going to figure things out after Games 1 and 2 were very un-Freddie Freeman-like. He's gone out to LA and managed to get things right. But Eddie Rosario, the 2 4-hit games and 1 LCS, like you said, that's some history right there. 2 home runs and 4 hits in a game. The Braves got that from Marcell Ozuna in Game 4 of the 2020 LCS to go up 3-1 as well. And we remember that as the Bryce Wilson game. I don't know that this one's necessarily more impressive or less impressive. And I don't want to say from a recency bias standpoint that this one is more so, but when you ask the bullpen to go out and keep the Dodgers down a day after things got very problematic in a place where you haven't won a game in 3.5 years, I would probably say that this one will go down as one of the most memorable, at least recent memory, wins for the Braves in the postseason. And it has put them on the precipice once again, a single win away from the World Series. And now they have to close the deal out. And nobody knows that better than the 26 guys and Brian Snitker and that coaching staff in that dugout. This is what they thought about all the way back in spring training when they showed up. You got it, in the best shape of their life. This is what they were playing for all year long. They wanted the shot at redemption, and now, by golly, they've got it.
Well, Rosario's big night, I mean, just part of a parade of long balls. I mean, him and Duvall go back-to-back in the second inning, the first Braves to hit consecutive home runs. In a postseason game, it's Javi Lopez and Vinny Castilla in Game 2 of the 2001 NLDS. Freddie Freeman adding another in the third. In all, they tagged Urias for 5 earned runs in 5 innings. The Braves have now seen him twice. They've seen Max Scherzer, Walker Buehler, and those 3 pitchers, 3 of the top 7 in the NL and ERA, and they have 11 earned runs in 14 innings against them. For people who don't have a calculator nearby, that's a 7.07 ERA against 3 of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, and I want to point this out as well. These guys, these great Dodger pitchers that you thought would really turn the game around and save LA's bullpen, they've been unable to do that thus far. Dave Roberts is having to cover 4, 5, 6 innings per night, if not more, when you think about the bullpen game in general that they were throwing to start things out. This is not what you expected when you look at these 2 teams on paper. But I hearken back to the preview that we did, and we sat there and I said, you have to look at how these 2 teams enter the series. The Braves finished their business, got the off days. They have the home field advantage, whether you think an 88-win team deserves it over a 106-win team or not. Them's the breaks. Those were the rules. That's how it's set up. And the Dodgers, it took all 5 games to dispatch the Giants, another great team, fly across the country, and then, hey, welcome to Atlanta. You're walked off twice before you even get it back in your ballpark and get to sleep in your own bed again. So they've been through a lot, and I don't feel bad for them, and nobody in the Braves side of things is going to feel bad for those guys. They want to beat them and move on, and hopefully, just based on the way that the things have been set up, The Braves are taking the big steps toward finally reaching up and realizing their goal, grabbing that brass ring and pulling it down and punching their ticket to the Fall Classic for the first time since 1999.
Well, I do have to, before we move on to game 4 and the setup here, I do have to give one more note. Those 4 home runs that the Braves hit, that tied a franchise postseason record for game 2 of the 1993 NLCS. So only once have you ever seen a power supply like that from the Braves in the postseason game. So let's set the stage for what could be a huge night for the Braves on Thursday night as they go into this matchup at Dodger Stadium. Max Fried on the mound, a chance to punch the ticket to the World Series, a bullpen game for the Dodgers. So, I mean, obviously the Dodgers are in the same position last year. They go from 2-0 to 2-1. The Braves take a 3-1 lead, and they did it in game 4 in a massive win last year, a blowout. They've been there obviously before. We know what happened, how things played out last year. Grant, I'm just going to throw this out there. Why is this year in this series different?
I mean, I think 2020 in and of itself was its own animal. And while you look at every opportunity to win an LCS and go to the World Series as exactly where you want to be, this team just feels like it started clicking and found its confidence at the perfect time during the year. They played down the stretch, really after the trade deadline, their best baseball of the season. Their new acquisitions paid off big time. Their pitchers stepped up. Charlie Morton really just snapped into place. Max Fried was big-time nails for the Braves over the final couple of months, one of the best pitchers in baseball. And that infield that had been hitting all those home runs really carried the Braves to that point. They got an outfield to go along with it that has taken them a long way. They got into a series against the Brewers where a lot of folks said, hey, the Brewers their pitching is too good. You're not going to be able to beat them. It was nice to be in October, sign the guest book on your way out. Well, the Braves won that series in 4 games. I think they feel like they belong. Not that they didn't in 2020. I'm not saying that at all. But I think that not only do they feel like that, but I think they have played like that as well. I don't imagine you can feel more invigorated and fired up and motivated than when you go into your home ballpark, win back-to-back games in dramatic fashion with a different hero on each night. You had the Dodgers on the ropes in game 3. I don't want to take that away. How close were the Braves to sweeping the Dodgers in this series? Much closer than they were a year ago. So I'm looking at the kind of competitive games that we've seen. A lot of it is credit to the Braves. Some of it is, hey, the Dodgers might be worn out in some ways and just not clicking on all cylinders right now. But that's what the game is, taking the opportunities you have, making the most of them, and finding ways to win baseball games. And I don't think you can take anything away from the Braves, because if you were to look at all of the national pundits and people that did their prognosticating for this series, it was not a whole lot of, well, the Braves are going to come out and they're just going to keep punching the Dodgers in the mouth. But that's exactly what they've done thus far, and they need to score that knockout. They've got the opportunity behind one of the best pitchers in the NL and Max Fried. They can do it in game 5 in LA, a place that they have not won back-to-back games in a long, long time.
Yeah, I mean, Wednesday night was the first Braves postseason win in LA since 1996. They sealed that series, by the way, against the Dodgers, a gem from a lefty in Tom Glavine. A generation later, they can do it with arguably the best left-hander they've had since Tom Glavine in Max Fried. I mean, the Braves did get, the Dodgers did get to Fried in game 1 for 2 runs. They saw him twice during the regular season. In total, he has a 2.50 ERA over 18 innings with 18 strikeouts and 1 walk against this team. I mean, you have to feel like, I mean, obviously, Charlie Morton has that pedigree, but if there's a guy that they want on the mound, the guy that's been rolling, the guy that has the momentum, this is the one, this is the arm that they want out there with the opportunity to close this thing out.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of their guys. I mean, they didn't draft him, but Max Fried grew up in the Braves organization. He blossomed into a very talented starting pitcher at the big league level. You feel like this is a guy that can be around here for a long time, pitching in games like this. It's a little bit extra sweet, I guess you can call it that, for Max Fried. And I'm sure that having gotten to know him some over the past few years, he is relishing the opportunity back in LA, a place where he grew up, watching Clayton Kershaw become one of the great left-handers in all of baseball, to be on that mound against that team with a chance to send his team to the World Series. And you talked about the whole Tom Glavine thing in 1996. There's a lot of poetry and prose that's built into the storyline for Max Fried. If he can help the Braves pull it off in game 5, we'll find out. But yeah, like you said, confidence running very high. this is a guy that you believe in because he's given you every fifth day a chance to win. That's what they're asking for out of him when he toes the slab in Dodger Stadium to start Game 5.
Well, a year later, we're back here again. The Braves one win away from their first trip to the World Series since 1999. We're going to be along with you the entire ride, this entire postseason here on Battery Power. So make sure you get over to the Talking Chop YouTube channel, subscribe, turn on those notifications so you get alerts every time we drop a new episode. He's Grant McAuley. I'm Corey McCartney. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, Braves Country.